Joining us on stage next to my mind and your mind, it is the wonderful Jessie May Peters.
Hi everyone. Thank you very much for joining me for the afternoon of talks today. I'm going to put that there. As you know, my name is Jessie May Peters. It's the enormous bit on screen there, which is just gone. Oh, 1 second. Well, I'm here to talk to you today about how to extract the most from coffee for those that produce it. So a lot of people, talk about extraction for the actual beverage, but I'm here to talk about the impact that it can have. There it is, a big fat lemon. So my TED Talk style is going to be really about the visuals. So I want you to listen to my dulcet tones talking about the denseness of specialty coffee and enjoy the screen. So my name is Jessie May Peters. And to me, our small segment of this vast coffee industry needs to work on its impact. I work for a not-for-profit specialty coffee importer called Raw Material, and our goal is to maximize the impact that coffee can have. But to do this, it is important to get this perspective on what is actually possible and the limits that our expectations of quality can have on the good that we can do. Nailed it. There are some elements of specialty coffee today that make it a blunt instrument. Our cup scores denote the quality of the coffee produced, largely from a taste perspective, and draw in a seemingly neat line in the sand between the us versus them of specialty versus commodity. But what if we find behind the curtain a quality that could often hold a lot of potential? For context, the process that helps us to create specialty coffees for export generates large volumes that just don't make the cut. These head straight to the local market where they are sold for far less money. But if we challenge our expectations of what is meant by specialty, some of it can be re-examined and still make it over the line. This gives us an opportunity to bring more coffee into specialty, putting extra cash in the pockets of the producers that need it most, which makes our part of the industry even more impactful. So this is us versus them. So this is specialty. We've got our own little mountain up there. And sitting within this bubble, it is easy to forget that the specialty market makes up just 20% of the entire industry, with commodity making up the other 80%. And ironically, not choosing the coffees below 80 points, we drew our lines to exactly match the split of commodity to specialty in the total market share. To me, specialty coffee feels often pulled apart by horses. They're horses which are going into very, very different directions. On one side, the hungry aspiration to enjoy coffees that eke closer and closer to the ever-elusive 100-point scoring cup. And on the other, the want for a direct, transparent relationship with producers that in an ideal world ensures they get as much money for their harvest as is possible. My interests in this talk are focused on a group discussed as the world's smallholder producers. These are people working on 2 hectares or less, which is also known as a smallholding. These people number in the millions, and from their individual small farms, they collectively account for 80% of all coffee production. The way I see it, we as a community that cares should be dreaming big for the majority of the world's coffee producers. But our smallness can make the fight seem futile. How can a small specialty industry like this make even a dent in improving producer livelihoods writ large? My goals in mind are twofold. 1, how can we best use our small market position to make the most impact for as many producers as possible? And 2, grow that impact to pull more quality out of the entire supply chain for them. We should accept that some of our limits to being a force for change are self-imposed through the quality of the coffee that we think is represented by the term specialty. Do we at times limit the quality of the good that we can do for the sake of the consumer's palate? I would argue yes. I'm very interested in the metrics we as an industry have at our disposal that can change our impact and challenge our opinions on what we deem as good enough. Specialty coffee's small market share is reflective of how the market could also look to individual producers that sell their coffee. Most smallholder producers sell their farm's harvest as a single lot, which is then sorted as change continues through the supply chain into either commodity or specialty coffees. And so there are 3 metrics that I want you to come away from this talk considering for the future of your buying, be that as a consumer, a brewer, or a roaster. They are screen size, defect count, and fermentation. So we'll start with screen size. Screen size and defect count are both based on samples taken from each sack of coffee on delivery to the buying point, and they are 2 important metrics which help to define exportable quality. The thresholds for these are both defined domestically, so within the country where the coffee is produced, but they differ from country to country. So although there are set lines defining coffee as specialty or not, there clearly is a grey area of acceptable quality on an international consumption level. That's us. Screen size for me is a really interesting metric. It denotes that the size of a green bean has a direct connection to the quality of the coffee that it produces. Many of you will have tasted all coffees of all different sizes and know that a tiny pea berry and a marighipe are totally different and can both be absolutely delicious. Traditionally, though, bigger has meant better, with higher altitudes correlating to high quality and large bean sizes. This has been accepted as a traditional norm, and as such, I believe it is fertile ground for investigation. Last year, with our partners in Rwanda, Maraho Trading Co., we began to discuss screen size. In Rwanda, coffee is deemed a specialty as screen size 15 and above. Those below that are usually sent straight to the commodity market. And to me, this is that blunt tool in action. We decided to isolate the screen sizes 13 and 14 to see if there were any gems of quality that should be in the specialty market. That means just ever so slightly smaller than what is already going into specialty. The experiment found incredible tasting coffees that were scoring as high as their 15 plus counterparts, but were just a touch smaller. And as a result, these coffees have become some of the firm favorites that we now import from the country. They were always good enough, but we as a community had chosen not to consider them. Moving on to defect count. Defect count more than screen size can have a drastic effect on the cup that you drink. Defects come in a range of shapes, sizes, and colors, from the less problematic chipped beans all the way through to foreign objects like rings, metal, and soured beans of varying degrees, which have a pungent and unpleasant flavor or smell. These are heavily scrutinized during QC, and it is one of the largest factors in the price a producer will receive per kilo, and if it will make the cut to specialty or not. In Colombia, this system is called the factor de rendimiento, which is the exportable yield once beans of the incorrect size, defects of varying types are removed, as well as the weight difference between the parchment and exportable green coffee. The ratio between the amount of parchment and the processed exportable coffee is calculated, which gives the yield that is then paired with the categories of price on that day. But it's very important to note that not all defects are as bad as each other, and the coffee we receive in specialty is sorted with an expected defect count still present within it. To sort to 0 defects would be costly, time-consuming, and I would argue unnecessary. Depending on the customary export quality levels of a country, a coffee may be determined as destined for the local market, commodity, or specialty export. So again, we have a threshold set by expectations and assumptions of what, that if tweaked ever so slightly, could give more profits to producers and pull a percentage of their harvest over the line into specialty. What's interesting about the physical defects is they do not always denote a dramatic decrease in cup score or outright defective flavor components in your cup. And so, we have been resorting defects in Mexico with our export partners Red Vitor to see if there was more that could be extracted from the specialty market for these producers. To do so, we began tweaking the parameters set for the electronic sorter in the dry mill. For those of you who don't know, an electronic sorter is an impressive bit of kit that blows defective coffees out of a tumbling stream of beans that is finely tuned with rapidly fired puffs of air. With this method, we took volumes of coffee that after their first pass would have gone directly to the local market and we resorted them at a lower tolerance. Now, although there are more physical differences present, the output is still a rather good cup of coffee. Again, a coffee destined for the local markets and low prices has been pulled over the specialty threshold. These good profits and more profit were always there, but the systems in place meant that they were totally invisible. And as such, the producers received far less money than they could have for their hard work. Moving on to my third point, fermentation. Fermentation is the part of the transformation of all coffees, from parchment to green, and I would proudly call myself a fan of the lowest intervention coffees possible. Thank you very much, the wine industry, for that term. There are super tasty coffees out there, but I think the most interesting part of fermentation is that it can actually bring the specialty market to producers whose coffees otherwise would not make the cut. For example, those at low altitudes, non-equatorial regions, or those unable to grow more fickle coffee varieties. I would argue that fancy ferments that are the trend at the moment falsely alter the flavor expectations of the consumer market. They are costly to produce and warp the price floor for those who are trying their very best to get the most out of their coffee without the use of any dominant additives. But there are cheap alternatives that can beautifully enhance the cup profiles of even the most standard coffee varieties. There is an anoxic method of processing, which is also known as the water pillow technique. This method can massively increase cup potential, and most importantly, the profit returns for producers, all for the cost of some clean sheets of plastic, some large fermentation tubs that are clean, and some cold water. It is a process so simple that it can be practiced in remote and very under-resourced areas of growing with ease. To explain a little, the coffee is placed in a tub and covered with a plastic sheet. Cold water is poured on top, creating a vacuum seal, ensuring an environment that stops outside interference from passing insects. But what's most interesting is that the water acts as a heat exchange, drawing heat away from the fermentation below and allowing it to evaporate away. This helps lower the risk of developing unpleasant flavors like vinegar that are synonymous with long, hot ferments. The water pillow technique is low and slow, just like a really, really good brisket. But most interestingly for me, this approach is not only more cost-effective for producers, but its fantastic results will please the consumer palate whilst providing more money for those who grew the coffee. To me, it is a perfect result for specialty, providing the consumer with an interesting cup while simultaneously increasing the profits of the smallholders that produced it. To conclude, I believe that subtle tweaks to our expectations of specialty can have vast positive consequences for the producers upon whom we in this room depend. At this point in the industry, I believe we can challenge the assumptions of what is meant by specialty. By asking the questions of our own expectations, we can steer our focus towards improving the profitability of the crop. As the average age of the coffee farmer rises, this is the time to focus on making coffee a good earner. For the majority of producers around the world, growing coffee is just not a sound economic choice today. My work has shown me that leaning closer to the good over the exceptional gives our tiny slither of the industry the opportunity for the most impact. In order of importance, our choices need to serve the producer over our palates. Thank you very much.
Keep your applause going, keep your applause going, keep your applause going. I'm slow moving. Wow. That's all. That's so incredibly professional. Thanks for taking notes.
I've been watching a lot of TED Talk for research.
You brought it. I really felt like I was at a TED Talk. Thank you very much. So many amazing things brought to the table. Before we open the floor for questions, can we all just thank you for the incredible selection of pictures you provided us with? I was backstage taking pictures of the pictures because I don't really like these.
Well, as a bit of context, this one, I was talking to my colleague Phil about this. So this is a Georgia O'Keeffe painting, and I saw it many moons ago in a gallery. And it's the first time I've ever stood in front of a painting and cried. And I don't know what it is about this image, but there's something, it's literally just a farmhouse window and door, but it it's so, I don't know, it stirred something in me. And because I sort of take the sort of downer side of the industry, I'm talking about important change. It's not very sexy, but if there's a stirring, and it's like this image in particular was quite important. So,
well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Why did he talk about it?
Why did I talk about it?
Oh, that's a great question.
Thank you. So for me, the coffee industry is an amazing part of the world, right? We work with millions of people around the world that aren't as fortunate as us. And we're in a community that really celebrates the hard work of people. And so their plight and the work they do is really important to me personally. So yeah, that's why I chose it. I'm very passionate about smallholder coffee producers. Thank you for coming to my talk, by the way.
Yeah, and thank you for the question. What an excellent one. Why did you choose this? That's really good. It's a pretty sure question. For anybody who might feel a little bit shy about a microphone being passed over to them and having to come up with a question on the spot, Jessie, you're going to be around for the rest of the day?
Yes. So you can find Phil and I on No News Coffee Roastery stand at 2:30. We're going to be there doing a coffee tasting competition. And it's the most low bar to entry cup tasters competition you could ever do. Prizes to be won, and also you can come and chat. So if you find that something that I spoke about was interesting and you want to talk more, you can find us there till 4. So
excellent. Yep. And Noni is a wonderful human too. So everybody, please, round of applause for Jessie. It's a big deal to come up on stage and speak about it. Thank you for being on.